So you have to talk up a lot.
It's going there.
What? No, it's going there. You just have to speak loud.
Okay.
Should be good now. Should be good now. All right, much better now. I apologize. Let's get started with the show officially at 6:30. Jesus. All right. That's embarrassing. Trial and error, though. Trial and error. Let's do one more audio check. We're good. We're good. All right. Let's just restart the entire show. Everyone, please like the stream. Please go ahead and share the stream. We really need the support. We're trying the best we can in order to make the show as best as possible for everyone. Well, let's get right on to it. All right. All right. Peace plan. We had a huge week. We have Trump proposed a peace plan between Israel and Palestine, or Narnia, as the correct people say it. And pretty much it's just a good plan for Israel. It's a good plan for the, quote, Palestinians. But the biggest thing, the biggest concern that I have is the fact that Palestine's not taking it, obviously. And they are protesting in the streets right now as we speak. We have footage straight from Israel in Hebron that we want you guys to check out. So here is the reaction of Narnia to the Israel Narnia peace plan.
So what you guys just saw over there was many of the protesters from Palestine, aka Narnia, reacting to Trump's proposed peace plan between them and Israel. And what you saw was many of them throwing rocks, throwing stones at the Israeli soldiers that were trying to maintain the situation. At the same time, you saw at some of the shots, you saw some younger individuals, kids. They were breaking the stones into smaller pieces so that they could throw them at the Israeli soldiers, or some of them were even throwing it themselves at the Israeli soldiers. And that's, this goes to illustrate how far Palestinians are willing to go to show their hatred. They even instill this way of thinking through their youth. Joe, what do you think about that video?
Honestly, so I've been to Hebron before. And one thing about Hebron is that it's one of the most dangerous cities in Israel. It also has some very important Jewish sites, such as the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs are there. And for those who don't know, that's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives. Going to Hebron, we had so much security there, so much military presence there. There were snipers and soldiers patrolling around the city to make sure that people were safe. The question is, who were they protecting the Israelis from? And that's those people that you saw in the video. What's even more sad here is the fact that these children in Palestine, they are indoctrinated in their education system, in their schools, to learn how to hate not only Israel, but the Jewish people. This is something that we see the left neglect tremendously. The left likes to completely turn a blind eye to the fact that there are children in these territories, in the West Bank and in Gaza, being taught how to kill Jews. Not just Israelis, Jews. You look at the Hamas Constitution, and in the Hamas Constitution it states that they will not stop till not only Israel is wiped off the face of the map, but every single Jew dies. Every single Jew dies. This is what the left is protecting. This is what the Democrat Party protects, is these people who are explicitly anti-Semitic. And, Democrats and a lot of leftists like to tell me, well, Joe, Israel doesn't want peace. The Palestinians want peace. I'm sorry. You look at the video we just showed you. You look at a lot of footage. You go to Israel yourself. You go to Gaza yourself. You go to Hebron yourself. You go to Ramallah. You go to Bethlehem. You go to all these towns that are in the West Bank and Samaria and Judea. You ask me, who wants peace? You ask me, Israelis can't go to certain places in the West Bank. They're not allowed to. But Arabs and Palestinians can go anywhere in Israel. Jews are not allowed to run for office in the Palestinian authorities. But Arabs can run for office in the Knesset or the Israeli government. There's a party currently in the Israeli parliament that's completely anti-Israel. It's like BDS in parliament. You don't have that in the West Bank and Gaza. There's not one Jew who lives in Gaza right now. They pulled out over a decade ago. And I'll tell you this. If you still cannot see the violence and the hatred that's coming from Hamas, that's coming from Palestinians, and it's not every Palestinian, it's the leadership that they elected to lead them as, I don't even know what to call them, not a nation, but as a territory. If you still can't see it, you're part of the problem. You're absolutely part of the problem. Gaza, Hamas, the West Bank, they don't stand for freedom. They don't stand for rights for women, for people who are in the LGBT community, gays and lesbians. They don't stand for that. They don't stand for Christians. They don't stand for atheists. They don't stand for Catholics. They don't stand for Jews. If you don't fit in their criteria, they will persecute you. They will kill you. They will exile you. You go to Israel, you'll be safe. So you tell me, who wants peace? Hamas or Israel? Israel's the only one that comes up with peace plans that are actually reasonable. Israel's the only one that comes to the table. Hamas has not once tried to negotiate fairly with Israel. I went on a tangent. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, you spoke my conscience. And I okay. So I agree with everything you said, obviously, but as you were talking, you mentioned the left, and it just sort of made me think about, compare what you just saw in the video with the Palestinian protesters to what we have here in America with Antifa. So what do we have? We have two radical groups, both hate Israel in this case, both hate Jews, and then you have both of them destroying their own, society. They're not treating with respect, and they're just extremists. They're violent. They're not really interested in solving problems. They're just provocateurs. So when you put it into perspective that way, one, you realize that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. Not to go too off topic, but the second, just to be able to relate to it, if we had parts of America being controlled by Antifa, what and just trying to equate the situation, would we want to be under those kinds of threats constantly? We can't even put ourselves in that in the shoes of the Israelis. The way they're constantly living under threat by their neighbors that they're trying to constantly have peace with. I mean, if we were in that situation, we would be a little more understanding, I feel like. And when I say we, I mean the American left in our country. Uh, they should try to be understanding, but they're not going to come around. They're just going to keep saying Trump is bad. He doesn't want to help anyone. He's bad for Israel. He's bad for Palestine. Israel's bad too. That's just what the left is going to keep saying.
It's really interesting that you brought up Antifa and the fact that they hate Israel, but they're totally pro-Palestine. You look at what Antifa stands for, and you look at what they're fighting for, and what they're punching people for, and their signs and everything. What's really interesting is the fact that if any of those Antifa members were to do any of that in Gaza, they would be hung. They would be stoned. They would be, I wouldn't even say ridiculed, because that's way too nice. They would be killed. Antifa would be absolutely murdered in Gaza. These people, Antifa, they really have no idea what they have here. They're not grateful. They feel like they're entitled to everything. And I really want to put them in Venezuela or Gaza or North Korea. Like, I will pay for your flight. If there's an Antifa person watching this, I will pay for your flight to go to Gaza and create a protest. Create a protest for women's rights, for anti-free speech and all kinds. I want you to do that because you don't have free speech in Gaza, and it will prove to you that you'll be put in prison in Gaza. Now, I don't want you to go to prison. I don't want you to be killed. But I want you to understand that you'll be able to do all that in Israel. You wouldn't be able to do any of that in Gaza or any of the Palestinian-controlled territories. And it's really interesting that you see Democrats that they advocate for gay rights, they advocate for women's rights, they advocate for abortion, they advocate for all these things that Hamas is brutally against, but they support it. They support Hamas over Israel. Where in Israel, the women there have all the rights in the world. Arabs have all the rights in the world. Gays and lesbians have a pride parade. It's actually the only pride parade in Asia is in Israel. At least in the Middle East. I could be wrong. But it's at least in the Middle East. I know that for a fact. And you're telling me you're against the people that actually are advocating the same thing that the left is here? But, I mean, not to mention, Gaza kills gay people every day. There's pictures. I mean, you could just Google them. There's pictures of just gay people hanging off of cranes or even Hamas throwing gay people off buildings for being gay. That's an everyday occurrence in Gaza. And by the way, the people in Gaza, you see, everyone talks about like free Palestine. I agree. Free Palestine from Hamas. Because that's the only way we're going to solve this issue here is we get rid of Hamas. We get rid of that ideology, that toxic, peace-hating ideology is to get rid of Hamas. Because Israel has done just about everything they can in order to create peace and pursue peace. But also, by the way, Israel sends aid every single day to Gaza, and Hamas declines it completely. They decline it. And the reason why is because they're trying to make themselves look like a victim so that the American left can go ahead and say, wow, look at these people. They have no food. They have no water. They have no toiletries. They have nothing. Well, Israel's been trying to send that for the past decade or so, and it's been denied every single time. That's just it. Hamas is great at marketing. I'll tell you that. They're really great at marketing. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, like what you said about how the Israelis are trying to constantly give the Palestinians aid, and they'd rather, just for the sake of advancing their narrative and their propaganda to their people and to the outside world about how they're the victims and that Israel's bad, they're willing to let their own people starve, live in bad, poor conditions, have a lack of resources. Not only would it be better if they actually accepted those resources, Joe, but when you look back before Gaza was even given to the Palestinians as an independent territory, uh, governed by their own, by Hamas. When you look back, when it was still Israeli ran, uh, it was very civilized. It was like practically the way the rest of Israel was. It had nice buildings. It was a functioning part of society. And then you even, if you go back, you can probably find it online for those of you listening. Um, you can look at live footage that was taken when there were Israelis being forced to leave the territory while it was being handed over to the Palestinians, and they were being dragged by Israeli soldiers who I'm sure they were also upset about it, but they just had to follow orders. They were dragging their own Israeli citizens out of their homes that they put love into. They were investing their lives into. With their farms, with their homes. They just had to leave it all behind. And as they're being dragged out, you see Palestinians. Not only do they get, you would think they would just keep it for themselves. No, they're destroying everything. They're ripping crops out of the ground. They're throwing it on the floor. These are just, I mean, I can't say it's everyone, but what you see on TV at least, which is probably the majority given from what I've seen, is that they're just hateful people. They don't even care about themselves. They would rather live the rest of their lives hating on Israel and destroying all that property and resources that they got from the transfer than to keep it for themselves and just make their own lives, prosperous for their children, for their family. And that just goes to show that they aren't sane people. We shouldn't handle them as sane people. Once they learn to change their attitude and their mindset, then we can start taking them seriously again, and then maybe bring a peace plan forward. But clearly, from where we are right now, between the two parties, we shouldn't even bother coming to them with the peace plan. It does nothing for anyone.
I mean, we can also go back in time here and we can look at what Hamas has done in the past. Just maybe a month or two ago, I think it was about 2 months ago now, Hamas sent hundreds of rockets into Israel out of Gaza, hitting cities like Ashkelon, Sderot, where I've been to Sderot before, and Sderot's just a mile away from the Gaza border, and we're looking around, we're seeing bomb shelters in the corners of every single block. We saw footage in Sderot. We were there. We visited a great organization there that what they do is they try to expose what's happening in Sderot with these rocket attacks. We noticed that there was footage of children dying, parents dying, brothers and sisters dying, wives and husbands dying. Innocent people. They're not in the military. They're innocent people. They did nothing. They're just civilians dying from these rocket attacks. Hamas also, a few years ago, I think it's been 5 years now actually, kidnapped 3 boys. 3 boys in their teens, going home from school, took them. I think it was a 6-week search. Found them dead, completely dead. Boys, they're just boys, not even old enough to vote in Israel, not even old enough to join the military in Israel. Kidnapped, put up for ransom, and then killed. We saw, I believe it was last year, a Hamas sympathizer came into a house, murdered and raped an entire family. The husband came home from work and saw his entire family dead. When do you see the IDF doing this? When do you see Israel doing these sort of acts? You don't. There's no record of it. There's absolutely no record of it. It's just disgusting to even talk about, to even think about, to see the actions that Hamas has done against the Jewish people, against the Israeli people. And all these leftists, I don't know how they're defending this. How could you defend such disgusting acts of violence? Disgusting acts of violence. It's, ugh. I can't even think about it, Josh. I absolutely can't even think about this. Because, I have family in Israel. And I call my uncle once in a while over there, and I talk to my aunt once in a while. And I say, like, yo, how's it going over there? Are you safe? Are you okay? How's your family? How's everything over there? How's your friends? And I'm scared for them. I'm scared for them because Hamas will not stop until Hamas, not the Palestinian people, but until Hamas is completely destroyed. And I know those are strong words. I know calling for the destruction of an organization is pretty strong, but I just gave you multiple reasons for you to agree with me that this is a terrorist organization. This is a threat. And the Democratic Party and the modern day American left doesn't agree with me. They believe that Hamas is just a normal government organization that protects their people. And they are not. Hamas kills their own people, and they kill innocents in Israel. Men, women, and children. Again, who wants peace more? It's obviously Israel. I cannot even think of one reason why Hamas would want peace at this point. I cannot. So, yeah, I'm getting pissed off right now, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It's it's a very tough situation. It's been going on for a very long time, and uh, one thing that we could do is hope for the best for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people. Hopefully, they both find peace between each other. But we also have to be realistic. And as I said before, we should not, if we really do want them to have peace, we should not be coming to them, to the Palestinian people, when they still have this mindset about victimizing themselves into making Israel look bad, uh, you know, brainwashing their youth into hating Israel and Jews in general, and teaching them to become bad people, eventually joining Hamas. Like you saw those kids in that video throwing rocks at those Israeli soldiers. I mean, if we want peace, like Joe said, who wants it more between Israel and Palestine? It's Israel. Clearly, it's Israel. You look at how one lives and how the other lives, it's going to be Israel. So then, when you, one second, yeah.
Thank you.
So when you have a party, in this case Palestine, trying to teach their youth to hate, we cannot work with that. First, they need to come around and actually be civilized people and try to live civilized and have genuine discussions um, with the mindset of actually achieving peace, and then hopefully we can come to the same table and discuss the arrangements between Israel and Palestine. But for now, we can't do it. We cannot simply talk about peace just because we want peace. They have to want peace too. And I commend President Trump for taking this initiative. It's not easy, and he wrote the art of the deal. So if anyone could probably achieve the peace deal between them, it's him. And with that said, this goes to show how unreasonable the Palestinian people are. President Trump was extremely fair in that deal. Uh, in that deal, if you read it, you can go on the White House website. One thing I noticed, they constantly refer to Palestine as a state. Now, that's not necessarily a change in policy, but when you're proposing a peace plan and you see that kind of language, it shows that we're coming into this, in good faith. And the Israeli people, the Israeli government, backing this deal, they are too. So the only people left that have a problem with this deal is Palestine, and there's nothing left for them to ask for. They just want to kill Israelis, kill Jews, as Joe said, and that's the problem here. There's nothing else that's getting in the way of achieving peace.
We're gonna do a quick audio check. Let's see here. All right, it's gonna be a lot better now. I just got some messages saying that my audio is a little low, but your audio is good. So, but yeah. So, anyways, in conclusion about the Israeli-Palestinian peace plan proposed by President Trump, it's a great deal. Palestinian Authority, they should take the deal, but they won't. They've been protesting, and they've been assaulting and throwing rocks at the IDF, which is pathetic and a sign of weakness. I will say this, though. If the left continues to support Hamas, which they will, I will confidently say that if they believe in Hamas, let's just say in some parallel universe they really have no idea what's going on over there, then they're just idiots. But if they know what Hamas is doing to not only their own people, but to as well as Jews and Israelis, and Arab Israelis, by the way, Arab Israelis do exist. Imagine what they're doing to Arab Israelis. Call them traitors. They hate them probably even more than Jews. Is that what they want for America? Is that what the do-nothing Democrats want to do in this country? They want to impeach the president, one of the most effective presidents this country has ever seen? Have President Pelosi or President Warren or Biden, whatever, and implement policies like Hamas does? If they truly believe that Hamas wants peace, if they truly, truly believe in what Hamas stands for, geez, I wonder how they're going to control this country now.
Maybe we're going to have Sharia law if we have the Democrat win the election in 2020.
Well, I mean, that's not too far off with Minnesota right now. You look at the Minnesota has a large amount of refugees right now. I mean, you have people like Ilhan Omar representing a district in Minnesota, and they love her. So I wouldn't be surprised if, and I hate talking about this sort of stuff because I actually have a few Muslim friends that are really nice people that they're anti-Hamas, that they know what Israel stands for, and they might not agree with some things, but they support the right for the Jewish people to have a state. But it's so few of them. It's so few of them. And I've had many people that, before it became more religious, I wasn't wearing this Jewish hat all the time, the yarmulke. People wouldn't know I was Jewish until I told them, and pretty much as soon as they found out I was, Israeli, I was Jewish, they stopped talking to me completely. And it's not only Muslims; it was also just leftists. Simply because I'm a Zionist. I believe in the state of Israel. I believe the Jewish people deserve a country. The day the peace plan was proposed by President Trump, I was on Twitter, like always. I'm always on Twitter nowadays. And trending at the time was #FreePalestine. Out of curiosity, I clicked it, checked it out, decided to see what was going on. And they referred as Palestine, or as Israel, as Jerusalem, specifically as Palestinian, specifically Jerusalem. That I think they referred Jerusalem as Muslim Jerusalem. And they kept showing pictures of the Dome of the Rock, the mosque that's right next to the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, or the Kotel. And you look at it and you see these tweets, and you're thinking, they're not showing the rest of the old city. Are they just that ignorant to know that where that mosque stands right now was a Jewish temple 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? Are they that ignorant to understand that there's an extreme amount of Jewish history where that mosque is, and they're calling it a Muslim territory? And by the way, I've seen Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims pull this on me, saying, "Oh, well, there's Muslim religious areas there and holy areas there." I said, "Okay, but what came first? Because Islam was after Christianity, and Christianity was after Judaism. So you tell me. By the way, if you're ever in Jerusalem, you got to go to the City of David, which is an amazing tour, and it tells you all of the evidence that Jerusalem is a Jewish city. All the evidence. They have found coins. They have found pottery. They have found where the king actually lives in the old city. They found everything. There's an amazing water tunnel. It was a lot of fun, actually. Very dark, but awesome. And it was a lot of fun. You go in there and you see the Jewish history come to life. And the Muslims, they really have no history there. Absolutely no history. And they're calling it just pisses me off. Muslim Jerusalem. Go ahead, Josh.
So, no, you're absolutely right. Um, so there's constantly excavations being done in those areas in Israel and around, and whenever there's some revelations of like artifacts from hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago that prove that Jews were there first, that there was a Jewish civilization that's found, let's say, in the Palestinian controlled areas right now. They'll destroy the evidence just for the sake of advancing their own narrative. Again, just destroying valuable pieces of history just so that they could say that they could avoid even confronting the fact that the land belonged to Jews at one point in history. Now, the other important thing to mention is that Jerusalem is not even mentioned once in the Quran. It's not even mentioned once in the Quran, the holy book in Islam. So I really do take interest in understanding why, when you look at the Middle East as a map as a whole, you have so many different amounts, swaths of land being controlled by so many different countries that are all Muslim. Some of them are even theocracies, and that's fine. But you have one little country, the size of New Jersey, maybe even a little smaller, I think, right, Joe? And it's the only country in the world that's a Jewish state, and an even smaller area next to it being controlled by some Muslims, in this case Palestine. They have a problem with this. Supposedly, they can easily go to another country if they're oppressed, or they can just learn to live peacefully and have a normal civilization in the territory they already control. But no, they'd rather be hell bent in destroying the one Jewish state in the world, which is right next to them. And Joe, what do you think about that?
And by the way, I think it's really interesting. The Palestinians, they're putting up with this fight, and they think that Israel can't just go ahead and take over these areas. Israel's a pretty powerful military. I mean, they can absolutely take over the West Bank. They can absolutely take over Gaza. But they choose not to. They, they choose not to. Why? Because they're pursuing peace. Because Israel wants peace. But Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, what are they seeking? Seeking violence. They're seeking hatred. They're seeking killing. They're seeking murder. They're seeking all this crap that's going to do nothing for them. Israel has never lost a war, by the way. The day after Israel declared independence, May of 1948, the day afterwards, they were attacked by, what was it, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. Well, I know Iraq was part of that. So, about 5 nations, 5 or 6 nations, attacked day after independence. Israel had no military. Israel had no planes. Israel had very little weapons. Israel had pretty much nothing. They won. Survived. Then we'll hop over to 1967. The war in 1967, where the 6-Day War, where Israel took the Golan, Israel took Jerusalem, and Israel actually took the Sinai Peninsula. At the time, Egypt was one of the most powerful air forces in the world. And in one day, the Israeli Air Force completely destroyed the Egyptian Air Force. Completely destroyed it in one day. No planes. Yeah. No planes. Nothing. The Egyptian Air Force was obliterated in one day in a 6-day war. And Israel gained land, gained the Sinai Peninsula, gained Gaza, gained Jerusalem, gained the Golan Heights. And this wasn't just Israel versus Egypt. This was Israel versus Syria. This was Israel versus, I think Jordan was also part of that. and they still won. Do, I, you know, I'm a skeptical kind of guy, like with everything, but that's a miracle right there. Israel had nothing. Israel didn't even have support from the United States yet, and they still completely destroyed the enemies that Israel had. And I think it's just a phenomenal thing to think about. And actually, my grandfather served in that war. And I never met my grandfather, but he was an amazing guy. He was a paratrooper in Israel, fought in the 6 Day War, and helped win this war for Israel. So, Josh, I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you say they had nothing, and yeah, to some extent they did have they did have nothing. The U.S. support came very much towards the end of that war. But one thing that they did have that many people tend to forget is they had God. And when you look at the history, when you look at the history between the Jewish people and Israel, the word Israel, where does that come from? Not to get too biblical here, but I think it would, to put it into perspective, Israel is what uh, it was originally the land of Jacob, and God asked Jacob to take the new name Israel. So now that's why they call Israel the land of Jacob, right? And being, being Jewish means to be the people of God. And if there is one thing that we ever need, even if it's only one thing that Jewish people ever have and nothing else, it's God. And that's why the Jewish people tend to persist and be successful in the state of Israel and throughout, honestly, but especially in Israel. That's without God, without the belief in God from us, from the Jewish people, there would not be an Israel. And I think that's something important that especially all Jewish people, should always keep in mind.
And, I love what you just said, Josh. I really do. And you're completely right. Um, I want to take a minute to talk about the story of the Jewish survival for a minute. The survival of the Jewish people is absolutely amazing. If you go back in history, you'll see that there have been probably, I would say, every century, some sort of persecution of Jews. You look at last century, there was a few. Everyone goes right to the Holocaust, but it wasn't only the Holocaust. It was even the survival of Israel. Like I said, day after independence in 1948, Israel was attacked by multiple countries and still won. Israel back in 1967, attacked by multiple countries, still won and gained land. During the Holocaust, 6 million Jews died. 6 million. And it's actually interesting we're talking about this because just recently, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I've had over 100 of my own family members die in the Holocaust. It's going to come up on 3 years now since I've been to Auschwitz. I went to Auschwitz with an amazing organization called March of the Living. Highly recommend anyone to go. It's a week in Poland and a week in Israel. It's an amazing program. Standing in Auschwitz-Birkenau, you feel a mixture of emotions. And I was there during the March part of the trip. Most of the trip is you go to multiple camps and whatnot, but towards the end of the trip that you're in Poland, there's a march. And it's 30,000 Jews marching together into Auschwitz-Birkenau. Together. Marching into Auschwitz-Birkenau. 30,000 Jews, all wearing blue, by the way. Most, I would say, carrying Israeli flags. And if they're not carrying Israeli flags, they're carrying a flag of which the country they came from. And we had Jews from Mexico, Jews from New Zealand, Australia, from England, from all over the world come to this one event. And once I got inside of the actual camp, it's quiet, it's eerie, and you start to just think and try to visualize in your head what was happening here? You look at the train tracks, you see, like, okay, so the train stopped here, they came off, and there was Nazis yelling at them, and there was dogs barking at them and telling them to get off the train. There was a guy there that would point his thumb left and right, and depending on which side you were on, you would either survive or you'll go into the gas chamber right away. In Auschwitz-Birkenau itself, there was roughly 1 million Jews that died. Auschwitz-Birkenau, just one camp, 1 million Jews died. And part of that was actually my family. And when you were in Auschwitz, there's 3 Auschwitz camps. When you're in Auschwitz 1, there's actually a gas chamber still intact. When I walked into the gas chamber, you saw scratches on the walls. You saw, from fingernails. Gasping, that's from people gasping for air, gasping for their own life in the gas chamber. Saw people try to scratch their initials in so they won't be forgotten. You saw people scratching Stars of David. When I walked into the gas chamber, first off, I didn't even want to go inside. And the guy who brought us there, an amazing guy by the name of Joel Katz, which I'm still in contact with today. Amazing guy. He was leading the thing, and him and a bunch of the people, they were like, why don't you want to go inside? And I said, if my family went in there and wasn't able to leave just as easily as we did, as we can today, just as freely, we could just walk in there and walk right out. Why should I have the right to go in there and do that? Why should I have the right to be able to walk in there and just leave anytime I want? And there was one of my friends that I made on the trip. She told me, she said, if you do this, you are proving the Jewish existence. You're pretty much giving a massive middle finger to Hitler. And you were saying, we are here, and we're here to stay. Forever. Marching right into Auschwitz, I looked around and I noticed the 30,000 Jews that were there, waving Israeli flags, showing their pride. And you just start to think, how the hell did we survive this? How? It's exactly why is what Josh said. No matter what happens, no matter who tries to destroy us, they can't. Goes back to the Bible. I can't remember. Hopefully you can. You go back into the Torah. There's a story of this guy who is kind of hired by another country, and he's hired to curse Israel. And when the king of the country says, and I'm sorry, I can't exactly remember everything about it, but the country, he says, the king of the country, he goes, I want you to curse Israel. And he goes and he tries, and he goes, I can't. Because every time he tries to curse Israel, he ends up just blessing Israel. And the king gets super pissed off at this guy, and he's like, I can't curse the people of Israel. And it goes back to this one other verse in the Torah that says that God will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who will curse Israel. Those are amazing words. And you can see how there has been countless times where people try to destroy the people of Israel, people try to destroy the Jews, and they just can't do it. Can't do it. I know we're getting super off topic here, but I love this conversation. Josh, what do you think?
I love it too.
You know, I'm really happy with how the show. I know we had a lot of technical difficulties, and I am really happy with how this show is starting out. We probably don't even have a lot of viewers. I don't know. I don't care because I know which highlight I'm going to be using now. There's a lot of good highlights for the both of us in this one. I think, and I really want to thank every single one of you for tuning in and for watching this stream. It's really important you subscribe, you follow both Josh and I on Instagram and Twitter. We have a lot of content coming, people. A lot of content, and we really do appreciate your support. I do want to say, though, that, we are growing every single day. Just a quick side note here about the voter fraud video. We have reached 184,000 views on Twitter alone, and I think it's well over 12,000 views on YouTube, and it's doing just phenomenal because of you. Because of you, and of course the Patriot Productions team. I appreciate everyone that supports, everyone who helps out. Shout out to Alex Clark for retweeting the video, and as well as shout out to Benny Johnson for tweeting out the video. This is a really, really big issue in this country. We need to make sure that our elections are not stolen by people who don't belong here. Plain and simple. People who don't contribute to society as much as normal citizens do. So it's really important that you check out that video if you haven't already. And of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. There are really big things coming out of this video. I can't disclose that much, but I got a phone call recently from some very high people here in the state of Arizona that are very interested in this video. And there's a lot coming. And I will obviously let you guys know as soon as I know regarding what's happening behind the scenes here. So, Josh, any thoughts?
No, yeah, I'm also excited to see what happens with our expose on the left here in Arizona, and justice is going to be served ultimately at the end of the day. Just stay true to your values and always keep your belief in God, and everything will always turn out for the best.
Of course. So, listen, we're going to cut this off right now because Josh and I have not eaten dinner yet. we got to eat some food, but we really do appreciate every single one of you for joining us and watching the stream and watching Cup of Joe. I'm honestly, this whole thing started with me doing an Instagram poll. I said, who wants me to do a show, and it overwhelmingly was a yes, and I'm really, really happy with the outcome of it. And it's going to get a lot better once Josh and I, by the way, if you don't know, Josh and I are roommates. We're living together. We're moving in life. Our relationship is moving very quickly.
Yeah, our flags are roommates too.
But once Josh and I move out, and we're actually we've looked at a very, very nice place, very big, very spacious. We're actually going to dedicate a whole room to a studio for both of us, with Josh's own content and my content and live streaming the show, as well as me going on other shows. I was on a show today with Chandler Crump. Great guy, young guy too, really young. He's in high school. Really smart guy, really, really smart kid. I like him. But I'll tell you this, once we move, and it's going to be around May, It's gonna be around May, probably after May. Um, we're gonna be having a fantastic studio. We're doing the best we can right now. If you guys don't know this behind the scenes, we are in our dining room, which isn't even a room. It's just like it's connected to the kitchen and the living room here. We're on a dining room table right now. We're doing the best we can to make this look like a studio, make this as best as possible for each and every single one of you. I'm going to close it off right here. Well, Josh, first off, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to see where the show goes, and I'm sure all of you are as well. It's going to be great.
It's awesome. I really do appreciate every single one of your people's support. Please go ahead, share, like, comment, follow, everything you got. And we'll see you next week. See you guys.